Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. This season is all about powerful perspectives, real stories, and fresh insights from incredible women who are thriving, growing, and redefining what it means to live fully in midlife. This week, I'm joined by Kim Damon. Kim is the founder of Worthy Moms, Midlife Discoveries, and a certified Life and Enneagram Coach who helps empty nest moms build stronger, more connected relationships with their adult children while thriving in midlife. Supporting women through this season is truly her passion. In this episode, Kim and I talk about her program, Worthy Moms, and what inspired her to create it for mothers who may be experiencing estrangement or low contact with their kids. We also dive into why this topic isn't talked about nearly enough, even though it's something so many women are walking through. Kim offers thoughtful insights on how to begin healing and rebuilding those relationships while still finding moments of joy along the way. Kim Damon, welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast.
Oh, Nicole, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today and talk about all the things.
I am too. We've been having such a great conversation, and I thought it was about time we hit record because we're getting into some great topics. And today's conversation is one that I have been looking forward to because what we're going to talk about today is not something that I think comes up very often or often enough as much as it needs to. And it's really important. And I know there are going to be listeners who will hear this episode and are going through what you're going to be talking about today. And so it's going to be very helpful, I think, for a lot of people. But before we get into all of that, could you just briefly introduce yourself, share a little about what you do, your family? I think that would be great.
Absolutely. So, my name is Kim, as you know, and I started a business several years ago for moms that are struggling with their adult children. And it really came about in two different waves. One was my own wave. I had struggled early on with my own parents. I left home when I was 14 years old and was estranged from them for a good 2 years. And then it happened again in my mid-20s. So luckily for me, everything was mended and I had the most beautiful relationship with my parents. And I'm so thankful for that because they've both passed. And my mother ended up being my best friend. But at the time, I think about now, my grandchildren are actually that age. And I can't even fathom them being out on their own and going to school, doing a job, paying bills. It just floors me that this is still going on today. And then I had an episode with my own two children, and it lasted on and off for about 10 years. So I really dove into how can I resolve this with my own children. I wanted to be a part of their lives. And so I ended up creating a program and following that program. So I know it works. It's very flexible because our circumstances are always different. My circumstances with my parents were different from the circumstances I had with my own children. And so I am also married and I have two stepchildren. So, and 9 grandkids altogether. So there's a lot of managing our brains and managing our hearts around stepchildren, grandchildren, and my adult children,
Mhm.
my son-in-laws, my daughter-in-laws. So, yeah, that is why I created a program. It's Midlife Discoveries, and the program is a membership. It's called Worthy Moms.
Mhm. I
And
love
I
that
was
name.
really feeling unworthy as a mom. And that's when I started to understand that I am completely 100% worthy in the eyes of God. That is why I named it that, because when I get in touch with that, it makes all the difference.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you have to almost start with yourself in
Hmm.
that space to then move forward in mending and healing some of those relationships. Well, I want to get more into you talking about the program. I do want to give a shout out to Amy Wicks. She connected the two of us. And oh my
Yes.
gosh, I'm so glad that she did. So thank you, Amy,
Yes. Thank
for
you.
connecting us. I was honored to have Amy on my podcast when I did my Enneagram series this past year. So that was really fun to have her on. So thank you, Amy, for the connection. But yes, I would love for you to share more about Worthy Moms. You've talked a bit about your story and why you started it, and why I think it's incredible that you started it is because you went on to heal your own relationships with your parents and your children, and you could have just said, well, that's good, that's enough, I fixed my situation. But you chose to share your experiences and your knowledge and your tools with others. So can you share a little more about the program, how it works, and what you do within the program to support, I think it's mostly mothers that are going through this
Yes.
situation with their children, adult children.
Yes, absolutely. So I have a framework that I utilize in my training. It's a group membership, but my framework is Love Mends, and so much appreciate you talking about mending, because really mending our hearts is the first step. We really need to mend ourselves first before we try to repair any relationship, not just one with our adult children, but any relationship. And if I think about it this way, I think about, waking up, being late for work, driving to work, and I get behind someone who's doing 20 miles an hour, and I'm getting upset, and I show up for work in a very important meeting that I have, and I walk into that meeting aggravated, frustrated. How well am I going to be present for that meeting? And this is very much the same type of work that we do inside of Worthy Moms. It's a group coaching, and we learn a new lesson every week. We work on ourselves first, and then we transition over to working to mend our relationship with our children. Now, I want to keep in mind that there are different levels of estrangement. So I've incorporated some very flexible lessons so you can utilize these lessons if you're just low contact. Maybe your kids live far away and you're having trouble staying connected with them. Maybe they live down the block and you're having trouble staying connected. Um, or even moms that are fully estranged, really mending their hearts first. And this is so important. And the whole group is really defined by Romans 12:2, which talks about renewing your mind and not from the ways of this world, because estrangement is on the rise. And so if we were to follow what the world is doing, we are not going to be successful in mending that relationship. So it's really built on a Christ centered program.
I love that. Well, the first thing that I love about this is that you're talking about mending yourself first. We have to start with ourselves,
Mhm.
even if our perception is that, which I don't know how often you find this, that it's not me, it's you, or it's them, that's doing this or whatever. But I think that's so important. We have to look within
Yeah,
and
and
and tend to ourselves first. How do
yeah.
you help the women in this program do that? What are just some of the things that you ask them to consider or do? Is there something specific that you have them practice in order to kind of look at themselves and mending their own heart and soul in all of this?
Well, a couple of different things. One, I have a 5-step process that takes them through noticing that they have this thinking going on and how it's making them feel, what's in their mind, and then, of course, the action that they're taking. But then I also pivot over to we can create our own happiness. I love the word and. When we're going through difficult situations in our lives, when we're going through trials, tribulations, any kind of struggle, for some reason we don't believe that we can also have some happiness. And I think about it like a great big bowl. Let's just say we have all this pain and suffering in this big bowl, and we just want to solve the pain. So even if we take out one piece and solve each piece, we're even if we solve all the pain in the bowl, we're left with an empty bowl.
Mhm,
And so, what I propose is that at the same time, we become 100% responsible for creating our own happiness and putting happiness in at the same time,
mhm,
creating that joy in our life at the same time that we're dealing and managing and solving this painful
mhm.
experience that we're having.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really powerful. I can absolutely see how someone that is going through this painful time might believe that one, I don't deserve joy and happiness, or that I shouldn't have joy and happiness in my own life because of what's going on with my relationship with my children, that somehow I have done something or something has happened to where I don't just, shouldn't be enjoying activities that I like or experiencing positive things in my life. So I love that you affirm that and that you provide your members with ways in which to do that, because I could absolutely see how that would be one of the things that would go right out the window while they're in this really painful, difficult relationship situation with their children. We were talking before we started recording a little bit about the Enneagram, and I promised you I would not go down the rabbit hole with the Enneagram because we both are Enneagram enthusiasts, if you will, more than that, coaches and such. But you did share that you utilize the Enneagram as part of your program. And for those that don't know, the Enneagram is at its most basic, simplistic terms, and you define it how you would like to too, Kim. It's a system. It's a personality system that can really have some transformative, impactful. Um, I don't want to say power, but it has kind of there's tools and things to help us to really show up as the best version of ourselves and have compassion for other people and understand other people and how they might navigate the world as well. But you use the Enneagram a bit. And we were talking before about how understanding your children's Enneagram types was helpful to you as you were, mending and healing your relationships. How do you use the Enneagram in your program, and how have you seen it be helpful with your program participants?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important for us to understand and just acknowledge our own Enneagram personality. And I will tell you that I'm a 4 wing 5, and I took the Enneagram 4 times because I did not like the results.
I've heard other people say that too.
It was so funny. And outside of totally trying to fake it out, I was consistently coming up with a 4.
Mm,
And so I knew right away that I had some real blind spots that I needed to acknowledge in my relationships
Mhm.
and how I showed up in conflict and how I showed up in every relationship that I have.
Mhm.
But even more, I got to understand my children's. And one of the things that really, for each one of them, actually, one of the things with my son that I experienced, he is a one. And of course, I have a path to a one.
Mhm.
And it was so interesting because every time we would get into a discussion, whether it be about politics or about religion or about something that was happening in the world today, I felt like he was yelling at me or being abrasive. But really, I understand now that he just has this very high moral compass that he follows. And he's very passionate about what when he speaks and really truly believes in something.
Mhm.
And that just allowed me to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn what's going on in his life and I'm going to understand him. And also, it allowed me to meet him where he was at. So, the more I became passionate about the same subject, the more that we were able to dialogue and have wonderful conversations. Now, this, of course, transpired after the estrangement, in and out of estrangement. With my daughter, she is a three. And of course, that is one of my wings that I used quite often at work. I could pull out the three when I needed to, and I used that. But for her, she just wants to be acknowledged for the hard work that she does. And understanding where I could acknowledge her and where I could really point out how proud I was of her helped us mend our relationship, helped us
Mhm.
grow it and get stronger. So the Enneagram really helps a parent, a mom, to understand her children better, understand herself better, and meet in the middle somewhere.
Mhm. Right, right. Understanding how other people function and navigate in the world
Yeah.
is so important when it comes to relationship, as you
Mhm.
just very beautifully expressed with each of your children, how knowing their type and knowing it well to say, oh my gosh, this is why my son shows up this way. Because the Enneagram is based on the why we
Yes.
do what we do, right? And then with your daughter, just knowing that, gosh, maybe a affirmation to her of her accomplishments and things that she's done would just go so far, you know. And again, it's not the only thing we do as parents, but
Right.
certainly if you have a child who's a three, hearing that to them is just soul filling, you know? And of course, we remind them that it's not about they don't have to perform, you know, they don't have to do those things to be loved and earn love, but to them, hearing that from a parent or someone, you know, a mentor or something of that nature really goes a long way. It doesn't have to be anything more than just, gosh, I'm so proud of you. You did a great job on whatever it is, right? And
Yeah.
that's great. I love that you incorporated that and do incorporate that. And you mentioned us also understanding ourselves, you know, to your first point that the program focuses on mending ourselves and knowing that we're worthy of love and joy and happiness in our own lives. Also understanding and have empathy and compassion for ourselves and how we show up and why we do what we do is also really, really important. You know, when we met the first time over Zoom to talk about recording this episode, I was astonished at how common you said that. I mean, estrangement is rising, and estrangement with parents and children is rising. Why is this such an important topic? And I just never hear people talking about it. I mean, you might hear someone in their family, well, so and so doesn't talk to that person anymore or whatever. Um, why, yeah, other than kind of some of the obvious things, like why aren't we talking about this? Why don't we hear more about this particular issue in our families today?
Yeah. So let me just point out one fact. They've done some research on this, and I talk about this in one of my own podcasts, but it is actually up to 27% of families are experiencing some sort of estrangement with their children. Now, most of those are fathers, and I work with mothers, but this definitely factors into, what they're experiencing. But the reason we're not hearing a lot about it is because of the shame that goes along with it. If I tell you that I'm not speaking to my children, most people's immediate thought is going to be, what did you do? And so we keep it to ourselves. And quite frankly, in the beginning, I didn't even believe it myself. So it's such a shameful stigma, and we never know how someone is going to react. There's also people out there, quite frankly, that are a little nosy, and or they want to get involved, and you don't need anyone to get involved. We actually call those our flying monkeys. Well,
Yeah.
they will start asking questions. They will also, if they're a family member, they'll go to your child and start saying, "Why are you not talking to your mother?" Now, I actually experienced this with my own mother, and I had to tell her, I said, "Listen, you're going to have to resolve whatever you've got going on with the kids, and I need to resolve what I've got going on, because us getting entangled into this and having a lot of emotions about it and feeding off of one another is not going to resolve the situation." So it's very complex and it's different in every family.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I can imagine there is a lot of shame and fear of being judged, by people who really don't know what's going on.
Right.
Whether it be from the parent perspective or the child perspective, they might make assumptions of what they think might be happening and judging. And it's just like you said, the shame that people are carrying. I think especially, and I can only speak to it as a mother because I am a mother, but mothers are the ones that are supposed to be the nurturing, the
Mm-hmm.
child's go-to, if you will, right? We're supposed to be that person. And so when it happens between a mother and a child, people just are incredulous. How could that happen? My goodness, you're their mother, and or to the child, it's your mother, like how could and so I think that that judgment and that shame, yeah, I can imagine people would be very reluctant to talk about it. And we talked a little bit about how the holidays. By the time this episode comes out, the holidays are going to be approaching, and I'm sure that time of year can be very tough for families that are experiencing this, parents that are experiencing this. If someone is listening to this episode right now and they're experiencing this estrangement from their child or their children, or they're struggling in the relationship with their child or their children, is there something you would like to share today to encourage them as they might be listening to this episode today?
Yeah, so I would say the answer is twofold, because if you're low contact, I think it's really about being flexible with the holidays, with traditions, maybe celebrating at a different time, and just making room for them to have their own traditions as adults. And this comes from just simply calling them and saying, "Hey, I've got a few ideas. What do you think?" And being willing to be flexible, because even though it's difficult for us as moms to all of a sudden not have our children home for the holidays or have them come over for the holidays, we don't want to guilt them into it. We don't want to push them away.
Mhm.
As far as estrangement is concerned, this is really when we get to decide what we want our results to be for Christmas, our own personal results. And again, I use that 5 step process to back into, how do we define what those results are, and how do we make it happen?
Mm.
And so I just work with moms to make a decision. What would you like to do that you have full control over? Would you like to create some happiness? Would you like to be sad for the holiday? I mean, if you want to watch Hallmark movies,
Right.
you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or if you want to create a new tradition, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the piece we work through. Mother's Day, holidays,
Mm-hmm.
any special event, birthdays. It's very difficult. It is difficult. But once you decide and you develop this habit that you can be sad and happy at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
then that's going to bring you automatically some huge relief
Yeah.
in your relationship and a lot
Absolutely.
less pressure for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And could be, hopefully, potentially, God willing, the start to some mending and healing that
Yes.
may begin to happen. And it might just be that step that needs to happen. To your point, if your children don't feel guilted into participating in what maybe you did in the past, because I think if when I think about this, it's going to change, right? The way holidays are celebrated, the way you did things when they were younger is not going to work when they're older, whether they have a partner or not, or there's grandchildren involved or not. It's just not going to look the same. And as we begin to kind of process that and handle that and accept that and change our expectations, or to your point, create new traditions and new things, that can hopefully help us to heal and adjust to this. And so that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And if you're listening and you would like to learn more about Kim's program, I'm going to put links in the show notes to this episode, that you can visit to learn more about the program and talk with Kim about how you can be a part of it. Because this is an important topic. It's not talked about. And many people are dealing with this, in isolation. And a program like yours sounds like there's not just helpful tools and practices, but there's community, which is key, I think, in a lot of things, is having other people that can relate to what you're going through and understand it and don't judge you and all of those sorts of things as well. So that's super important, I feel like.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Kim, so much. This has been great. I really appreciate you sharing about this topic. And I'm so grateful that you have put Worthy Moms together, because it is important and we are worth spending that time and energy on healing our own hearts, that will then hopefully possibly lead to healing in relationships as well. So thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, thank you, Nicole, for having me. It was such a fun topic. I love talking about this, even though it can be difficult for people,
Mhm.
but I love the hopeful outcome.
Me too. Absolutely. There's always hope. There's always hope. So thank you so much, Kim.
You're welcome.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram at Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.